You know that voice, that nonstop commentary that just seems to be playing inside your head all the time?
Oh, absolutely. Like a radio station you can't quite tune out.
Exactly. It's narrating, judging,
Hmm?
worrying.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels like it never shuts up. And, the really confusing part, the question that always comes up for me, and I think for a lot of people is, isn't that voice me? I
Mm.
mean, it really sounds like me.
It feels so personal, right? It uses your voice, your memories, your concerns. How could it not be you?
Yeah. It drives how I feel, what I decide. It feels like the core of who I am.
Well, that's the fascinating thing we're diving into today. Because Zen philosophy has this, well, incredibly insightful and honestly quite liberating take on that very question.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Liberating how?
We're going to unpack how Zen makes this really clear distinction between our thoughts, that inner chatter, the noise, and what it points to as our actual true essence, our real self.
So not just philosophy, but something practical.
Definitely practical. The whole point of this deep dive is to show a pathway, really, towards finding more inner quietness, more actual choice in how you respond to things, and ultimately, yeah, a deeper sense of freedom.
Freedom from the thoughts.
Freedom from being completely tangled up in them, moving away from feeling like fused with your thinking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Like you're stuck to them.
Exactly. And instead, discovering a different way to relate to your own mind, we're aiming to give you a shortcut, sort of, to understanding what Zen calls the art of awareness.
The art of awareness.
Right.
Okay. And where are we drawing this from? What's our source material today?
We've got a really great mix, some core Zen texts, the classics, but also insights from contemporary teachers who bridge that ancient wisdom with modern understanding, people like Yuno, whose work is fantastic on this.
Great. So we'll be looking at things like this inner narrator.
Mm-hmm. That voice. And the big one, the difference between thoughts and your true self. And, importantly, some actual Zen techniques for cultivating this awareness, practical stuff you can try.
Fantastic.
Okay.
Sounds like a journey into, well, our own heads.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get started.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's ground this right where we all live. That inner voice. We all know those times when the thoughts just crank up the volume, right? It feels like this, I don't know, relentless commentary you just cannot switch off.
Yeah, like being stuck in a noisy room you can't leave.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And honestly, the default reaction, for me anyway, is I just start believing everything it turns out.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like we said, if it's in my head and it sounds like my voice,
It must be true. It must be me.
right, it
Yeah.
feels like direct orders sometimes, dictating my anxieties, my plans.
Yeah.
How could it not be me? And this is where Kenzo comes in, right? This student whose journals are often used in these texts.
Mm-hmm. He captures that perfectly. He literally asks, isn't that inner voice me? I mean, it sounds like me. It's such a common, understandable starting point for anyone trying to figure out their mind. Doesn't matter if you're new to this or you've been reflecting for years.
It's so relatable.
Absolutely, because identifying with that voice is, well, it's almost automatic. It's how we're wired, or at least how we're conditioned. Often from a really young age, we learn that our thoughts define us.
I think, therefore I am. But maybe taken a bit too literally.
Kind of, yeah. If I think something, it must be a reflection of who I am, or it must be a fact about the world. And that sets us up for, well, a lot of internal struggle. But this is where Yuno, the Zen teacher we mentioned, steps in with this really powerful clarification.
Okay, what does she say?
She looks right at that common idea and says, essentially, while that inner voice sounds like you, it isn't your essence.
Whoa, okay. Just straight up, it isn't my essence.
Straight up, it's not just a clever phrase, it's a core Zen teaching. And it immediately kind of shakes the foundation of how we see our inner world.
It really does.
Mm-hmm.
Because my immediate reaction is, okay, if it's not my essence, what is it then?
Yeah.
If this voice that feels so central, so me, is just, what do you say Zen calls it? A habit?
Yeah, that's one way Zen describes it, as a habit.
That feels weirdly passive. Like, it just happens to me. Doesn't that take away my agency or something? What does it even mean for it to be a habit?
Well, think about what a habit actually is. It's something you learn, right? Through repetition. It becomes automatic. It runs without you consciously deciding to do it every single time.
Like biting your nails or always taking the same route to work.
Exactly. Your mind gets habituated to generating this narrative stream. It's learned this pattern. So seeing it as a habit immediately shifts it. It's not who you are fundamentally. It's a behavior your mind does.
Okay, a behavior. And behaviors or habits can be changed. Or at least you can become aware of them.
Precisely. That's the key. It implies you can observe it without getting totally swept away by it. You can maybe even unlearn it or at least change your relationship to it. It's not fixed.
It's like a groove worn into a record.
Mm-hmm.
It just plays automatically. Yeah. But it's still just a groove, not the whole record player. That feels different. Less personal.
Mm-hmm. And Zen also calls it a pattern, which reinforces that idea of repetition,
Yep.
But it also points to the content. Think about how often you have the exact same worry loop or the same self-critical thought pops up again and again.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The greatest hits of my anxiety.
Right. Those aren't usually unique, spontaneous insights into your deep self. They're more like echoes, mental routines playing out. Neuroscience talks about neural pathways getting stronger with repetition. Zen noticed this centuries ago. The mind runs on these learned patterns.
Okay, habit, pattern. What was the third thing? Something about a stream.
Huh.
A stream that just keeps flowing. That sounds even more out of control.
But think about it differently. A stream that just keeps flowing highlights that it's continuous, it's dynamic, often automatic, yes. But crucially, you don't have to make it flow. It just arises.
Okay.
It's the mind doing its thing, generating activity. But just because a stream is flowing doesn't mean you have to jump in and get carried away.
Right. You can stand on the bank and watch it.
Exactly. It points to its impermanence. Thoughts arise, they change, they pass. They aren't solid, permanent things that define you. It's a natural process, like breathing, not a personal judgment being handed down constantly.
So, okay, the implication is huge then. If it's a habit, a pattern, this flowing stream, it means I can watch it. I don't have to be it.
That's the core insight starting to emerge.
It creates distance. Just a little bit of space between me and this stuff happening in my head.
Yeah.
Thoughts become things that occur in me, not of me. Wow, okay. That changes things. All right, so if that inner narrator, that constant chatter, is just this habit, this pattern, this stream, then we land squarely on what you said is the core Zen teaching. You are not your thoughts.
That's the crux of it.
It sounds so simple when you say it like that, but unpacking it, it's revolutionary, really. That voice, the one that sounds so much like me, not my essence.
It's the central pillar, absolutely. The insight that starts to unravel that illusion that we are our mental content. And like clockwork, it leads to the very next question, the one Kenzo asks, and probably everyone listening is thinking right now.
Which is?
So what am I then? The thinker behind the thoughts.
Exactly, because that's the default, isn't it? If I'm not the thought itself, surely I'm the one doing the thinking, the little person in the control room pulling the levers.
That's our usual assumption. We identify with the agent, the creator. If not the thought, then the thinker. But Zen points somewhere else entirely.
Okay, so if I'm not the thought and I'm not the thinker, what's left? Am I just nothing?
Not nothingness, but something much more profound. Zen identifies your true essence not as the thinker, not as the thoughts, but as the one watching the thoughts arise and fade.
The one watching, okay.
It's the awareness itself, pure awareness. And watching here doesn't mean analyzing or judging. It means a kind of detached, non-reactive noticing.
Just seeing it happen.
Seeing it happen without getting caught up in it. Witnessing the mental weather patterns without trying to control the weather or getting soaked by the rain. It's the consciousness that perceives the thinking, but isn't defined by the thinking.
Well, one watching.
Yeah.
I like that. It feels spacious. Like finding a quiet balcony overlooking a busy street.
Yeah.
But can you say more about that? What does it feel like to be that awareness, especially when the thoughts are really loud and insistent?
It's a great question. And to make it clearer, Yuno uses this classic, really helpful Zen metaphor, the sky and the clouds.
Okay, I think I've heard this one.
Yeah, it's quite famous. So imagine the sky. Vast, open, limitless, right? That sky represents the mind's natural state, its spaciousness, its capacity to hold everything without being changed by it.
Right, the background.
Exactly. Now, picture clouds drifting through that sky. All sorts of clouds, light, wispy ones, big, dark, stormy ones, different shapes, different speeds.
Okay.
Those clouds, they represent our thoughts. They come, they go, they change. They can be pleasant or unpleasant. But crucially, they don't affect the sky itself. The sky is still the sky, whether it's full of clouds or perfectly clear.
So my thoughts are just temporary weather.
Yeah.
Passing through the vastness of my mind. That visual helps a lot. It makes them feel less solid, less permanent.
Precisely. They're transient phenomena, not fixed realities. But here's where Yuno adds a really important refinement. It addresses your question about what it means to be the awareness.
Okay.
She says, you're not just the sky.
Oh, okay. I thought I was the sky in this metaphor.
That's the common understanding, but she deepens it. She says, you're the awareness that notices both the sky and the clouds.
Oh, okay, say more about that.
It means your true self isn't just the passive backdrop, the empty space. It's the consciousness that is aware of the space and aware of the thoughts moving through it simultaneously. It's the noticing itself.
So it's active, not just passive emptiness.
It's an active, aware presence. It's the light, maybe, that illuminates both the room, the sky, and the furniture, the clouds within it, without being the room or the furniture.
Okay, that lands differently.
Yeah.
It's not about being empty, but being the awareness that perceives everything, the thoughts, the feelings, the space around them, without getting defined or disturbed by them.
You got it. That awareness is the core of your being. It's stable, it's unchanging, unlike the thoughts, which are always shifting. This touches on the Zen idea of emptiness, shunyata, which isn't about nothing, but about how things, including thoughts, lack a fixed independent self. They arise, they depend on conditions, they pass.
They're empty of solid permanent reality.
Right. And recognizing that allows you to let them pass without grabbing onto them. The sky doesn't grab the clouds.
Wow. Okay, so the shift in identification, going from thinking I am the clouds, those fleeting thoughts and feelings, to realizing I am the awareness that sees the clouds in the sky. It changes everything, doesn't it? It fundamentally relocates your sense of self.
It's utterly transformative, because if you think you are the storm cloud of anxiety,
Then you are anxiety. You're trapped in the storm.
exactly, you're consumed by it, pulled into the drama. But if you're the awareness noticing the storm cloud,
Then the anxiety is just weather. Something happening that you're aware of, but it's not you.
precisely, it doesn't define you. You don't have to react automatically. You gain this inner space, this freedom. You shift from being a victim of your thoughts to being an observer. That's a massive leap.
Okay, this sounds amazing, liberating, like you said, but how do we actually do it? How do we make that shift happen? Because let's be real, my default is definitely fusing with thoughts, especially the sticky ones.
It's everyone's default, pretty much. It takes practice.
And Kenzo had an experience with this,
Yeah.
right, in the source material, something about meditation.
Yeah, it's a great little anecdote. He says, I remember once during meditation, I had this thought, I'm not doing this right.
Oh, the classic meditation thought.
The classic. And he says, instantly, that familiar knot of frustration started to tighten in my stomach. He felt that fusion, that belief.
In there.
But then something shifted. He noticed another quieter voice, or maybe just a realization saying, that's just a thought.
The moment of separation.
That's it exactly. That's what Yuno calls the shift. That tiny, quiet moment where you recognize, oh, wait, this thing in my head, it's just a thought. It's not necessarily a fact about reality or about me.
It's like seeing the strings on the puppet for the first time.
Perfect analogy. Because that simple recognition, it's just a thought. It interrupts that automatic chain reaction, the belief, the emotion, the entanglement. It creates that sliver of space. The thought, I'm not doing this right, stops being an absolute truth and becomes just mental content that arose.
And Kenzo felt the difference immediately.
He did. He said, that gave me space. Like I didn't have to fight it or believe it. The knot loosened.
That's the freedom right there. Not having to wrestle with your own mind constantly, not automatically buying everything it sells you.
Exactly. It connects directly to what Yuno teaches. When you observe the mind, instead of fusing with it, you reclaim your freedom. And that phrase, fusing with it, is so important.
Yeah. What does that really mean, fusing?
It means that automatic buy-in. Believing the thought instantly, identifying with it completely, getting emotionally hooked. When you fuse, you lose that space, that choice. You become the thought or the feeling it sparks. You're swept away.
But when you observe,
You get that distance back, that pause, that moment where you can actually choose how to respond. Instead of just reacting based on whatever thought popped up, you reclaim your agency.
okay, so how does Zen train this? It sounds like it requires some serious mental discipline to break that fusing habit, especially with strong emotions or deep-seated beliefs.
It does take practice, for sure. And Zen cultivates this primarily through silence, through stillness. The main practice, the cornerstone, is zazen, seated meditation.
Just sit.
Well, it's more than just sitting. It's a very specific way of cultivating awareness. Typically, you sit quietly, often in a posture that helps you stay alert but relaxed. And you might bring your attention gently to your breath, maybe feeling the rise and fall in your belly.
Using the breath as an anchor.
Exactly. It's a neutral point to return to. Because inevitably, thoughts will arise. Memories, plans, worries, random song lyrics.
Oh yeah, the mind goes everywhere.
It does. And the practice isn't to stop them or push them away. That usually just creates more struggle. Instead, you simply note the thought. Maybe a soft mental label like thinking or worrying. And then, gently, without frustration, you guide your attention back to the breath.
So the challenge isn't the thought itself.
No. The challenge is our tendency to get caught up in the story around the thought, to start analyzing it, judging it, following it down a rabbit hole, to grab onto it. Zazen trains you to just see it, acknowledge it, and let it pass. Like seeing a cloud, noting cloud, and letting it drift on.
Not grabbing onto them. I like that phrase. It feels more achievable than stopping thoughts. But what does not grabbing look like in practice? Is it like mentally batting it away?
It's gentler than batting. It's more like opening your hand instead of clenching your fist around it. You allow the thought to be there. You see it clearly, but you don't engage with it. You don't analyze why it came. You don't follow its storyline. You don't add emotional fuel to it.
Like watching a train pass by the station. You see it, you know it's there, but you don't jump on board.
That's a great way to put it. You observe its arrival, its presence, and its departure without getting involved in its journey. You let it go just as easily as it came.
Which brings us back to the sky and clouds. Kenzo asked, so like clouds passing in the sky? And Yuno confirmed, yes, thoughts come and go. The sky doesn't chase them.
It perfectly illustrates that non-interfering quality of awareness. The sky isn't bothered by the clouds. It doesn't try to hold on to the nice ones or push away the stormy ones. It just allows them to pass through its vastness.
And the sky itself isn't harmed or changed by whatever weather passes through.
Exactly. Your fundamental awareness, your true nature, remains unaffected by the content of your thoughts. Thoughts are visitors. They arrive, they stay a while, they leave. You don't have to give them the keys to the house or let them dictate how everything is run.
Okay, so putting it all together, then isn't saying get rid of all thoughts, which feels impossible anyway.
Right, not the goal.
It's saying change your relationship to them. Watch them, notice them, let them pass, instead of letting them run the show. It's less about controlling the thoughts, more about controlling your engagement with them.
You've got it. It's shifting from being driven by your thoughts to being the one who observes the thoughts. That's where the power lies.
Okay, so we've got the theory. The inner voice isn't really me. I'm the awareness watching it.
Yeah.
And we've got the practice. Observing without grabbing, like Zazen trains us. But let's talk about the real-world impact. So what? Why does this matter day to day? Kenzo nails it, I think, when he talks about stress.
Yeah, his examples are so relatable.
He says, honestly, most of my stress comes from believing my thoughts too quickly. And he gives examples like, they didn't reply, so they must be upset.
Yeah.
Or that killer one, I'm not good enough, I'm going to fail at this. Or even, the silly ones like, did I leave the coffee maker on? I definitely did. I'm such an idiot.
We all do that. We take a simple thought, often based on zero evidence, and immediately treat it as fact. They didn't reply becomes, they're angry with me. I have a presentation becomes, I'm going to fail.
And boom, instant anxiety, self-doubt, misery.
Exactly, and Zen's diagnosis is direct. That's how suffering starts. It states very clearly that believing every thought as truth is a primary source of stress and suffering. It's not necessarily the external event, but our internal reaction, our belief in the story, our mind spins about it.
That's huge. It shifts the focus inward. It's not the thought I'm not good enough that hurts. It's the believing it. It's letting it define me, fusing with it.
Precisely. The thought itself is just mental energy, a pattern. The suffering comes from the attachment, the identification, the belief. And this points to that crucial nuance Yuno really emphasizes.
Which is?
Zen doesn't ask you to stop thinking. It asks you to stop believing every thought as truth.
Okay, that distinction is vital. Because trying to stop thinking feels like trying to stop the tide.
It's generally futile and frustrating. The mind thinks. That's its job. It generates thoughts, solves problems, makes connections. It's an incredible tool. The practice isn't about shutting it down. It's about developing discernment.
Discernment, like telling the difference between useful thought and just noise.
Exactly. Learning to differentiate between a helpful thought and mere mental chatter. Recognizing that a thought is just a proposition, an idea, a possibility, not necessarily a fact, and definitely not the totality of who you are. It's about questioning that automatic assumption. If I thought it, it must be true and important.
So when Kenzo says, and when I stop believing, there's more quiet, more choice.
Yeah.
That's the direct result.
That's the lived experience of this shift. The more quiet isn't necessarily silence, but it's the quieting of the struggle. The noise level drops because you're not constantly feeding every thought with belief and emotional energy.
You stop arguing with them or defending against them or buying into them.
Right. And the more choice comes because you're not on autopilot anymore, jerked around by every passing thought. You create that pause, that space where you can respond intentionally, wisely, instead of just reacting based on the latest mental headline. You stop letting thoughts run the show.
It totally redefined what control means. It's not about controlling the thoughts, which is exhausting and often impossible.
Right.
It's about controlling whether you give them power over you.
Well put. And this skill, this ability to observe without being consumed, this discerning awareness, that's what Zen means by the art of awareness. It really is an art, a skill you cultivate.
It takes practice.
Definitely. And this whole practical approach is summed up beautifully in that classic Zen, Yuno often quotes, "The mind is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master."
Ah, yeah. I've heard that one. What does it really mean in this context?
It means when the mind is functioning as your servant, it's amazing. It helps you plan, create, learn, remember, solve problems, connect with people. Think about using your mind to figure out a tricky problem at work or learn a new language or recall a happy memory. That's the mind serving you brilliantly.
Using it as the tool it is.
Exactly. But when it becomes the master,
That's when the trouble starts.
that's when you unquestioningly believe every anxious thought, every self-critical judgment, every fearful prediction it throws at you. You let it dictate your emotions, your actions. It runs the show, and you're just being dragged along.
Like being ruled by the noisy commentator.
Precisely. It generates obsessive worry, paralyzing doubt, resentment. It fuels reactions you later regret. It becomes a tyrant. The adage is a constant reminder. True power comes not from shutting the mind down, but from putting it in its proper place as a helpful tool, not the boss.
And for you listening, this is so empowering. It means you don't have to be pushed around by your own anxieties or self-criticism. You have a choice by understanding you are not your thoughts. And by practicing this art of awareness, maybe through Zazen, maybe just through mindful moments during the day, you can actually gain some real control over your inner world.
It's not about stopping the mental traffic. It's about stepping off the highway onto the sidewalk and becoming the calm observer of the cars going by. You decide when and if you want to engage with that traffic. Hashtag outro.
So just to wrap up the main takeaways from our dive into Zen and awareness today. Remember, fundamentally, you are not your thoughts. That inner voice, it's familiar, sure, but it's not your core essence.
Right. Your true self is that awareness, that quiet watcher, noticing the thoughts like clouds passing through the sky.
Exactly. And the practice is learning to observe those thoughts, just noticing them, without grabbing onto them, without getting tangled up, without automatically believing them.
And doing that gives you freedom, space, choice, less struggle, more quiet, more ability to respond thoughtfully to life. And if you ever feel totally swamped by your thoughts, like that inner noise is just overwhelming, remember what the teachings say. You're not broken. You're just fused with your thinking.
That's such a relief to hear sometimes. It's just a habit, a pattern, not a fundamental flaw.
Exactly. It's something that can shift gently with practice, with awareness.
So the invitation to you listening is, just try it. As you go about your day-to-day, try watching instead of believing. Just for a moment here and there, see a thought pop up. Instead of jumping on it, just notice it. Ah, here's a thought about it. See if that tiny act creates even a little bit of space.
Yeah. And maybe a final thought to ponder as you move through your world, internal and external. Think about all those clouds, the thoughts, worries, plans, judgments passing through the vast sky of your mind. How many of them are you unconsciously chasing after, or clinging on too tightly, or letting completely block out the clear sky?
What might happen? What new clarity or peace might show up if you just practiced, even for a moment, enjoying the sky itself?